It's nice to see you back in our show of Expat Living. Well, lives of people in Hanoi have been changing rapidly since the Doi Moi era started, and the once quiet and peaceful city of Hanoi is turning to a restless place. However, for many people, including some foreigners, the old romantic scenes of Hanoi have never been lost. In our show for today, we're going to meet a man who spent all the time during his stay in Hanoi to capture the beautiful, unforgettable images of the city in a special period of history. Now, let's meet the man, John Ramsden. This is Sir John Ramsden, a former British diplomat who used to work in Vietnam from 1980 to 1983. That was when the subsidy era in the country was going to end.
I was a young diplomat and I was working in Vienna, and one day I was summoned by my boss and given 4 months to get out to Hanoi. That's how it was in those days. Nobody asked if I wanted to go there, but actually I was delighted because it sounded, really interesting and it was going to be an adventure, and so off I went.
30 years has passed since John left Hanoi. The city has transformed into a dynamic and crowded place, but for John, the old Hanoi is still there in his mind.
Well, it was a very quiet city. You could be in the center of Hanoi on Saturday evening by the Hoan Kiem Lake, and all you would hear is bicycles going by and people sitting on the front door around a paraffin lamp and talking. Very peaceful. It was rather beautiful in a quiet sort of way.
These images of Hanoi during the subsidy era are familiar to John during his 3 years in office. The streets filled with electric cars, bicycles, and pedestrians. Despite the economic difficulties facing, everyone here seemed to be optimistic, and there was no sign showing a miserable life here. And John, with his camera, has managed to capture that moment of history. John Ramsden was one among a few expats in Hanoi those days, joining the diplomatic service in 1975 and have been working in Senegal and then in Vienna, Austria. This man, when coming to Hanoi, quickly became interested in the city. Whenever he had free time, John traveled around and captured everything he saw on the street with a camera.
When I landed in Hanoi, I had never seen a photograph of what the city looks like. So I was really interested to go and look and see. And then when I started to look, I thought, hey, this is very different to what I imagined. I mean, I didn't realize Hanoi had 1,000 years of history. And I just thought it's very beautiful. And so for me, it was a way to explore the city and also enjoy the city.
When John ended his term, he brought back home over 1,700 photos of Hanoi. But 30 years later, he decided that it's time to show people what he had witnessed throughout those years. Revisiting Vietnam this year, John comes back to places that he visited and took photos in the past. Totic Street is one among those destinations. After 30 years, the wind of change has brought this street a new look. Old houses were knocked out and replaced with new buildings. But here and there, this British man still sees traces of the old time. His old Hanoi is not completely lost.
Well, obviously it's changed enormously. Really, I'm very happy. I think Hanoi today has got a really nice combination of much more open, much more prosperous life for everybody. It's like a modern city, global city, but it still has a lot of the old charm. like we've been around today, seen a lot of the same places. You go off the main road into the little alleys and you still find the same charm. So I think Hanoi's, it's not all concrete, it's not all modern buildings, all the old temples and markets still going, so it's really nice.
Wandering through the small streets and alleys of the old quarter, the place where he visited quite often in the past, John can feel the coming back of the old memories. John is not coming back here just for some sightseeing. In fact, he's trying to gather information for the huge number of photos he took. And luckily, everyone he meets is willing to help him with the clues, such as names of places or people in his photos.
Không, cốc đồng này đền nhiều cụ Giáo Lợi, ở tầng 2, cụ Giáo Lợi. Cụ mới chết thôi, mới chết được 10 năm.
I have read quite a few Vietnamese novels, obviously in translation. I'm afraid I don't speak Vietnamese, but what comes out in many Vietnamese novels is how much the Hanoians love their city, and I think that is easy to understand when you look around.
During the short trip, John also had a talk in the Goethe Institute about his idea for an exhibition later this year. John believes he has good reasons to unveil his photos 30 years later.
You know, I had my career, I went on working, and I only just recently left the ministry, and so now I have more freedom to, come back to Vietnam and to work on the photographs. Maybe it was a good thing to leave it 30 years, because now with that remove, people can see the changes, and I must say the changes are really extraordinary in one generation.
And most audience members who attended the talk appreciate his plan for a photo exhibition about the old Hanoi.
Mình sinh năm 71, đến cái thời điểm ông chụp là 10 tuổi. Mình cũng đi xếp hàng, cũng đi xếp nước. Tức là tất cả những cái gì thực sự là những cái con phố ấy thì lê la tuổi thơ ở Hà Nội này thì hết những cái chỗ ấy. Có chỗ thì nhận ra, có chỗ nó lâu quá, nó thay đổi thì không nhận ra thôi. Thực sự là mình cảm ơn ông ấy rất là nhiều, vì đây thì không phải nhiều người giữ lại những bức ảnh chụp người đấy, hoặc giả họ giữ lại nó không theo một hệ thống nhất định.
Thời gian nó qua đi thì mình cũng không còn nhớ đầy đủ. Và cái bộ tư liệu nó cũng giúp mình, tuy là người trong cuộc ấy, thì mình cũng nhớ lại và có cái điều kiện suy nghĩ về cái sự thay đổi của đất nước. Thì đây chính là cái giá trị của cái tập ảnh tư liệu.
John's idea received great support from Vietnamese youngsters in the UK. Pham Kinh is an architect currently working in London. On hearing the idea, Kian and several others decided to help John realize the Hanoi Spirit of Place 2013 exhibition.
For the older generation, it's really nice for them to see the images that the Hanoi that they lived in, but also for the younger generation to understand that part of history and see that it was a tough time in order to appreciate what we have right now.
The exhibition coincides with the 40th year of Vietnam and UK diplomatic relation. The exhibition tour started in Copenhagen and will commence in Hanoi later this year. "30 years can wipe a lot of things off one's mind, but there's one thing that time cannot change in John's memory about Vietnam is Thuc Bắc Street. This is where his friend he made 30 years ago lived. That's the house of Bu Xuân Phái, a Vietnamese famous painter. Though Phái has passed away a long time ago, the great feeling John has for him still remains unchanged.
C'est chez vous? Oui. Là, ici. Ils sont toujours chez moi. On a des peintures de Bangkok, des tubes. Des tubes de peinture de Bangkok. Il était tout petit. So it was really lovely to meet his family again, and I have very, very fond memories of Phái.
And for Mrs. Singh, Bu Xuân Phai's wife, and Bu Thanh Phương, the painter's son, the memory about John, a special foreign friend of the painter at that time, is still there.
Ông bảo ông có 2 cái tranh của bố.
Ông John là một trong những vị khách đầu tiên đến thăm ông Phái. Thì thành ra là cái ấn tượng về vị khách này nó rất đặc biệt. Mình nhớ là mỗi lần ông ấy đến thăm ông Phái, ông ấy đỗ cái xe, ông đi cái xe hơi tự lái đấy. Nhưng ông ấy đỗ rất xa, cái xa mấy phố rồi. Sau đó ông đi bộ lững thững đến.
The British diplomat was in love with Phai's painting even before the painter became famous. As Phương remembers, there were many times that John visited Phai's small flat, gave him presents, and together they went out for sightseeing. It is said that the love for the small streets of the old quarter of Hanoi that brought these two people together.
Các ông ấy thì cũng thỉnh thoảng có những cái chuyến đi lãng du, đi thăm phố phường. Thì mình thì không có dịp để đi theo họ. Thế thì mình không biết là ông Phái và ông John trong lúc ông Phái vẽ thì ông John chụp ảnh hay thế nào thì mình không chứng kiến. Thế nhưng mà mình cũng thấy là họ cũng có những cái lần, có những cái mối quan hệ nó khá là thân thiết mà vô tư đó.
Visiting his friend's family this time, John is happy to know that Phương, Bu Xuân Phai's son, is following the path of his father. Also, Phai's family is enjoying better living condition than what he knew in the past. He believes that his friend from heaven would share the feeling he has now.
I'm sure Phái would be very happy to know that his son is now a well-known artist and that his family are living in the old house, but with a bit more space, and that his own work is now known throughout the world. So I expect he's up there. I hope there's a good cafe up there where Phái is, and that he's looking down and having a smile right now.
A photo of Phái that he took, that's the gift John presents to the family to show his long-lasting friendship. In spite of enjoying meals in fancy restaurants, John and his companion from London, Kian, arrive at a small eatery, the theme as a pre-1986 eatery of the subsidy period in Hanoi. Here, there's nothing like Sumter's buffet. Instead, it serves Phurka food like plain rice mixed with manioc. But that's what John comes here for. He never had a chance to eat a true Vietnamese meal during the subsidy period, and this return to the country brings him the opportunity. Other than that, he wants to find out the adaptability of the Vietnamese in difficult situations.
I think people were very adaptable and ingenious to bring up, after all, the young people who now I meet in London and New York. They were brought up and educated by the people who lived through this period, and they did a pretty good job.
Not only enjoying the food, John was also given a quick tour about the items in this mini museum by Dũng, the co-owner of the eatery. Food stamps, queuing stones, lighters, and other items used in the subsidy period all bring the memory about Hanoi back to John.
It's very nice, very interesting. I love to see the queuing stone of a famous scholar who had put it down, and to wait his turn for the water or for the food or whatever. I think it seems to be a period that many people are interested in.
And Dũng, the eatery owner, was also impressed with John's photos. Being a person with great love for Hanoi himself, Dũng showed his support for John's idea about photo exhibition later this year. He hopes that people like John would help complete the big picture of the capital city in the past.
Tôi nghĩ là những cái bức ảnh đấy thì cũng sẽ rất có giá trị về tính lịch sử, vì những người khi mà ông ấy có thể ông ấy triển lãm thì rất nhiều người ta sẽ nhận ra cái cảnh đúng đời sống thật của người Hà Nội và những cái giai đoạn khó khăn. Đấy, vì là ông chụp những có cảnh rất điển hình, kể cả cảnh sinh hoạt và cảnh đời sống của người Việt mình cái giai đoạn 80, 81 đấy.
After the trip to Vietnam, John and his young Vietnamese friends have all the things they need for the upcoming photo exhibition. By showing the precious photos John has kept for 30 years, the British man will let people around the world and in Vietnam know how great the love he has for Hanoi.